Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Montevilla Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Baby Lock Lyric. In this video, I'm going to show you about the settings. Now, the settings button is this one right here. So when you push this button, you can navigate through the pages of the settings. There's 8 pages. You can navigate back and forth this way. And you can also go by the individual settings using these arrows here. Now, to change something, you can use these arrows right here. So for instance, if I wanted my needle position, when it rolls to a stop, right now it's needle position down. If I want to change that to needle position up, now it would roll to a stop with the needle up. Now even if we have it roll to a stop, needle down, when you push your cutter button, it will raise the needle after it cuts the thread. Okay, so moving on, twin needle. If we have this on, we can thread our machine using the auxiliary spool pin, 2 spools of thread here, a twin needle here. I'll show you what a twin needle looks like. That's this little guy right here, and you have one that comes in your accessory package, and you can do beautiful effects like this. Now, when you have twin needle on, it limits the kind of stitches you can make and how wide you can make them. For instance, it won't let you do any lettering with twin needle. It would kind of look funny anyway. And these are pretty much off limits, as well as your buttonholes. It would really make sense to make a buttonhole with a twin needle. But a lot of these stitches, as you can see here, are available to sew with a twin needle. And twin needle is basically a decorative type of stitching. So we're going to go ahead and turn that off, and then we're going to move on here. Now, width control, that's a really interesting one. With width control, this here normally is for making your maximum speed to be faster or slower, depending on how much control you want. But if you turn this on, now width control, as you're doing like a zigzag, you can make it wider or narrower depending on how you're moving this. You can kind of hear that little noise. It's kind of shifting position a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off, but it's a really neat feature to have to make those nice tapered zigzags. Okay, an initial position. Now this has to do with whether your needle is in the middle or on the side. Now right now I have it in the well, I chose a different, let's go with this. When this machine wakes up, by default, it's a left needle position. So if you look here, you can see it's on the left-hand side. If I go back into settings, I'm going to page ahead a little bit, needle position. If I moved it to center, here we go, then if I turn off the machine and turn it back on, it will be in the center position, or number 3 here, will be the stitch. Right now it's at number 1, which is this one right here. Okay, let's go back there, page forward. Okay, there's a little bit of an advantage for most sewing machines to have a left needle position. Now you may be thinking, well, how do I get a 5/8 inch seam allowance? And most garment sewers use a 5/8 inch seam allowance. Well, that has to do with the marks on the needle plate. So I've taken my seam gauge, put that right there at 5/8 inch, and now I'm going to use this line here and the 5/8 inch line right there. Put my presser foot down. There we go. Drop my needle. I'm going to lift this up, and you can see from the needle to the edge of the fabric is 5/8 of an inch, as long as I follow those lines. So what about center needle position? Okay, so I'm going to go okay, and I'm going to actually move it over to center needle position. With this one, if you use this line here on the bobbin cover, that one is now your 5/8 inch line with center needle position. So it kind of depends on what line you're using, whether you're using center needle position or side needle or left needle position. I'm going to go back to this and page forward and put it in back into what the default was, which is left needle position. Okay, let's go on to, that's page 2, so let's go on to page 3, elongation. Now this is where you can take some of your satin stitches up here, and it pretty much just applies to satin stitches, not to your decorative stitches. But you can keep the same density of stitching, but elongate your entire motif using the elongation. Now, right now I have not chosen a satin stitch, so it's not possible to make any changes, but if as long as I had chosen one, I could make it longer or shorter. Now, thread density is a little bit different. Now, notice the thread density is the same here. If I simply lengthen my stitch, that thread density would be less. So that's why elongation is what you'd want to do to make the motif longer. There's actually more stitches there. Okay, let's go down here, thread density. Now that's an interesting one. This shows you with standard thread density. Now if I chose this stitch here, which is these up here, this stitch right there, and I increased the thread density, it made it so it's more dense. With some fabrics that may be too dense, but with this particular fabric, this is sort of a denim, it worked out great. So whenever you change these for a particular stitch, stitch it out on the same exact kind of fabric and stabilizer or whatever you're using so that you can see what it's going to look like in your finished product. Okay, so that's thread density, and then character spacing. Now, character, they are talking about letters. Okay, if you look carefully here, this is standard spacing, but I can make it a little bit further apart. If I wanted to stretch out those letters a little bit, I can do that with character spacing. Okay, let's go on. Size selection over here. Now, this is a capital C. I've made it smaller using size selection. Again, you need to choose your character first, and then you can adjust that using this. And it's just smaller or larger. Fine vertical adjustment. Now, that's important for if you're stitching out a complicated, maybe one of these bigger designs, and stitch it out, especially if it's fabric that's a little bit different, stitch it out on a scrap of your fabric. And if it needs to be adjusted, for instance, if it looks like one of these here, that's what the fine vertical adjustment and the fine horizontal adjustment is all about. And the test motif that you'd use is number 36, right up here. So that's how you test it. And this is what it should look like. Okay? Usually it stitches out fine, but with some of the, like I say, some of the complicated ones, if it's looking a little bit funny, go into your settings, you can fix it. Now, presser foot pressure just has to do with how tightly the presser foot is pushing against the fabric. With some of your knits, they tend to get stretched out when you sew, and so you may need to reduce the presser foot pressure. This is in place of a dial or something that you see on a lot of machines that have presser foot pressure. Well, this is in the settings. Okay, let's go on. And the buzzer, that's the little beep that you hear. You can turn that on or off, depending on your preferences. Light, that just has to do with whether you want to have this light on or off. Now that may be useful if you're sewing in bright sunlight in front of a window and the light here is just kind of interfering, then you may want to have that off. I'm going to keep it on for now. Brightness just has to do with the screen. Maybe you're sewing at nighttime and the screen just seems a little bit too bright. You can adjust that right here. Let's go on here. Now, reinforcement priority on or off, that just means that it's certain, like, okay, I have this on right now. There are certain stitches that you want to make sure that you stop with one of these little locking stitches. So when you turn that on, that just means if you accidentally push this instead of that, you're still going to get this. You're not going to get a back stitch. It will just be that little locking stitch. So let's leave that off for now. Input sensitivity, that has to do with this touch screen. Now, for different people, the amount of time they need to leave their finger on a button will vary. It just kind of has to do with, I don't know, magnetism or whatever it is. Input sensitivity, you can adjust that to make it so that it responds a little bit better to you. And of course, your language, if your language is, your native language is not English, you can make it to Spanish or whatever you want. I'm going to keep it in English, that's my native language. And then this here just shows the software version, because this is a computerized machine, software version of 1.90. Okay, to get out of settings, you just push clear or OK. Either one is fine. To push it a second time, what that does is it just pages ahead. Okay, so I'm going to push OK to get out of that setting. So that's your basic settings on your machine. It's wonderful to be able to customize these things, play with the settings, experiment, see what you come up with. You may make a great machine even better for you through settings. So thanks for watching. We have a lot of other videos that you can watch here on our Montevilla YouTube channel. And if this video was helpful to you, give us a thumbs up. And if you have comments or questions, you can leave those in the area down below. Thanks for watching. Bye.